In the last video I made, step 1 in my journey with this new Tikka, and the link's in the description if you're watching this on YouTube, I fire formed some virgin brass in preparation for this step where I'm going to be loading for a powder ladder test. One omission in the last video was an explanation of what I'm actually trying to achieve here, and that's simply to create an accurate load that can be used for informal target shooting and informal competition at short to medium ranges, say between 100 and 600 metres. Ideally, I'm looking for a repeatable quarter to a third of a minute load at 100 metres, and I think the Tikka has that level of accuracy in it. In this video, I'll be showing the steps I use during rifle cartridge reloading. I'm not saying that this is what you should do, it's only what I've chosen to do after a huge amount of research and 20 odd years of experience in reloading. You should do what you are comfortable with and that you know is safe. I won't be showing any more reloading in the subsequent videos. They will concentrate on the results and the analysis. So to step 1, which is annealing. Why do you anneal? Well, even after the first firing, the brass will have become much harder, and without annealing, it continues to harden on subsequent firings. This leads to increasing amounts of sizing spring back of the shoulder and the neck. So I anneal for consistency, a word I'll probably use a lot during this video. Consistency in reloading is everything. And on case life itself, it can be significantly longer by annealing. The primer pockets will typically get loose long before you have a split neck. I anneal on every reload for every calibre I shoot, even straight wall pistol calibers. And come on, it even makes pretty colours on the case. Step 2 is sizing. Here I'm using a full length sizing die. Why? Again, consistency. There was a trend several years back when everyone moved to neck sizing, believing that the fireform case was a better fit to their chamber. While there is some truth in that, those who neck size, and I used to, will know that you can get 2 or 3 firings from neck size brass before you start to get difficult bolt close or bolt opening. And what does this tell you? The brass is growing. If it's growing each time, then its capacity is increasing, and therefore your pressures will be slightly lower each reload until you have to full length size, and then you're back to square one. Full length sizing ensures the brass is the same size every single time. These days, the world's top precision shooters in bench rest, short and long range, and F-class, all full length size. The die I'm using here is a Forster full length die. I've chosen this as Forster has an aftermarket service where you can send the die back to them and they will hone the neck to exactly the dimensions you want and therefore minimise brass sizing. You can of course choose to use bushing dies to achieve the same effect. However, I found that these can induce significantly more body neck runout than the honed die I'm using here. With a full length die, a common mistake is simply to follow the die manufacturer's recommendations of running it down to touch the shell holder or similar. And while that will produce safe ammo, the chances are that you're oversizing, which will impact both case life and accuracy. Ideally, we just want to push the shoulder back somewhere between 1.5 and 3 thou. And how do you check that? I'll cover that in a moment. But first a quick word on the sizing lubricants I'm using. On the body, I'm using Imperial sizing die wax. You need the tiniest amount, almost less is more. And on the neck, I'm using Imperial dry neck lube. I use the dry neck lube because I don't really want any wax getting inside the cartridge case. It's difficult to get out during the cleaning process. So I talked earlier about sizing. Are you undersizing or oversizing? The way to check is take your fire control group out, your firing pin and spring out of your bolt so that it just drops as you can see here. Take your piece of brass, pop it in the chamber and close the bolt. It should close without any resistance whatsoever, which is great. You now know you've at least sized it enough, but have you oversized it? And the way to check that is take a piece of sellotape. Now sellotape is exactly 2/1000 of an inch thick. Pop it on, stick it down, roll the case head against a hard surface, and what that will actually do is cut the sellotape neatly around the case head. And then you can just gently pull off the sellotape, leaving your perfect 2/1000 of an inch ring around the case head. Stick it back in the chamber, and what you should hopefully feel here is a slight amount of resistance as you close the bolt. As you can see here, it's just sticking about halfway. So from there I can see that the brass is sized pretty much perfectly. It certainly has clearance, and 2/1000 of an inch additional length would cause it to bind. Sized spot on. I have a second step in my brass resizing, and that is to run it through a mandrel die. The mandrel die allows me to set the neck tension to whatever I want. In this case, I'm using a 0.223 inch mandrel within this Sinclair die, but I could replace the mandrel with any size that I wanted to. So why bother with this step? Well, it allows me to change the neck tension to anything I want independent of the full length die. Secondly, it allows me to ensure that the neck is straight and pushes any inconsistency in the brass wall thickness to the outside. From my own testing, having a completely smooth and uniform inside neck is very important to start pressures and consistent bullet release. So we checked earlier that we're resizing the brass properly, but how consistent is that across all of our brass? Here I'm picking up 3 pieces of random brass that have been sized, and they're all measuring 1.454. This is using a Hornaday headspace gauge. And maybe out of the 50 pieces of brass, I might get plus minus half a thou, something like that. These 3 pieces just happen to be spot on. The other thing to check is the concentricity between the body and the neck. So using an RCBS case master system here, rolling the cases around, I can see that, well, again, I mean, it's almost unmeasurable, certainly under 1/1000th of an inch. In the previous step, we pushed any inconsistency to the outside, and this brass hasn't been cleaned yet. So with that in mind, we've got a pretty good idea that the internal dimensions are absolutely spot on. Another check I like to make is, have we actually got the neck tension that we were looking for? I think I mentioned earlier I want 2/1000th of an inch. So take a bullet, zero against that, and then we can pick up a case and measure the inside diameter, 2/1000th of an inch, 2/1000th of an inch. Looking good. Although a caliper perhaps isn't the best tool in the world to use for this job, if used with care, you can get good repeatable results. The next step is trim the brass to length. Here I'm using a Forster 3-way cutter, which deburrs the inside and the out at the same time. Why? Again, that word consistency. Not only does it give me consistent length here, plus and minus maybe half a thou, but deburring inside and outside is done consistently every single time as well. Trimming before I tumble the brass to clean it, as there's still some lube on the inside of the neck, which can only help with the smoothness of the cut. Next step is to clean out the primer pockets. Here I'm actually using a primer pocket uniformer. Why? Well, I'm cleaning them anyway, so I may as well ensure that they're all to the same depth every time, so that the primer seating is consistent, square with the case, and therefore the firing pin hits with the same energy every time. The next step is to tumble clean. This is really more than anything else to remove the lube from the sizing process. Leaving the lube on the case can cause dangerously high bolt thrust pressures. You want the case to grip the chamber during firing. I'll leave them in here for a couple hours or so. One good tip is to leave a couple of dryer sheets in the tumbler as it goes. This collects a lot of the dust and dirt. The next step is brushing the inside of the neck. Recent research by the Annealing Made Perfect team on their amp press has shown that brushing the necks improves consistency of both bullet seating and extraction forces. The mechanism isn't fully understood, but it seems that the micro serrations created by the brush make all the difference. In any case, it only takes a few seconds to brush all of the cases. And so on to priming. I've tried a great many priming tools over the years, but this Forster coax model is the best I've found so far. It has a unique 3-jaw system that you can see here, which locks the case really securely in place and doesn't allow it to tip backwards and forwards as so many priming systems do. Loading the primers is also very quick and easy. The tool has excellent primer feel and it's super quick to use. Now on to weighing the powder. Here I'm using an RCBS Chargemaster 1500 combo machine. It's incredibly convenient. Typically when I've thrown a charge, I then take that case, seat a bullet in it, and by the time I've done that, the next charge is ready. However, today as I'm filming this for you guys, I'm just charging all the cases at once. For the ladder test I'm going to be doing, I'll be loading 5 cases each with 22.0 grains, 22.2, 22.4 and so forth up to 23.8. Now to the last step in the reloading process, which is seating the bullet. I'm not doing anything fancy here at all, just taking my time, making sure, especially in the first few, that I'm reaching the size that I'm after, which is 1.909, which will take me 10 thou off the lands. The only perhaps unusual piece of equipment that I have here is a micrometer die, which is fantastic for allowing you to adjust the overall length on the fly. Not using it in this test, but when I come to the next one, which will be the overall length tests, this allows me to very quickly and very accurately set that overall length. One last thing that I like to do, and really just for peace of mind, is to check the run out of the bullet. We already checked the run out of the case neck compared to the case body, and here now we're just checking the overall run out of the bullet, and as you can see we are getting certainly under 1/1000th of an inch of run out, which is very good indeed. And that's really the end of this video now. In the next video I will have shot these rounds off and we'll go through the data-driven analysis that I do against that. And from there, we'll then load up some more rounds with varying overall lengths against our ideal powder charge and do some further analysis from that. So until then, thank you very much for watching.